What unfolds when an officer drunk on authority encounters a woman who surpasses him in every meaningful way? It began on a Wednesday evening, well past 11 p.m. The hour when Toledo, Ohio's streets lay nearly deserted, only scattered workers making their way home, or someone like Lieutenant Colonel Adrian Wallace passing through the city. She had wrapped up a base conference 2 hours to the south. Adrian sat behind the wheel of her government-issued black SUV. The glass was lightly tinted, nothing elaborate, just neat, understated, and silent, much like herself. She had been on the road for some time, humming quietly to the rhythm of rubber meeting asphalt. Her thoughts were already focused on reaching home. She maintained proper speed, stayed in her lane, committed no infractions. Yet Sergeant Daniel Mercer perceived things through a different lens. He sat parked along Reynolds Road, nursing tepid coffee while browsing his phone. Restless, his evening shift had crawled by without incident. No radio calls, no excitement. Then a vehicle he didn't recognize rolled past. He discarded the cup and activated his emergency lights. Before Adrian could process what was happening, the patrol car appeared in her mirrors. She reduced speed and moved to the shoulder, composed and methodical, exactly as her training dictated. The cruiser door banged shut. Through her mirror, she observed a lanky figure approaching. His palm rested against his sidearm, a flashlight gripped in the opposite hand. He bypassed the passenger door. He walked directly to her window. "License and registration," he demanded. No pleasantries. Adrian positioned her hands visibly. She lowered the window part way. "Officer, may I inquire why you pulled me over?" Mercer directed the beam into her eyes. "You were weaving across lane markers. Failed to signal. Appeared like you might be intoxicated." She arched an eyebrow. "I wasn't." "License and registration," he repeated more forcefully. Adrian chose not to debate. She moved deliberately, retrieving her papers from the glove compartment. While handing them over, she mentioned, "This is a federal vehicle. I'm employed by the government." Mercer examined her identification. "Military." "Yeah," he sneered. "That doesn't place you beyond the law." "I never claimed it did." His tone grew more aggressive. "Exit the vehicle." Adrian paused. "I'm sorry?" I said, "Get out of the car. I'm conducting a field sobriety evaluation." Her muscles tensed, yet she remained composed. "Based on what justification?" "I've been cooperative. I haven't consumed alcohol. I'd appreciate knowing the reasoning." Mercer stepped closer. "Now you're defying a legal directive?" Adrian held her ground. "No, I'm requesting clarification." He didn't appreciate that response. He jerked her door open himself. "Out of the vehicle, immediately." That's when she discreetly activated her phone's camera and began recording. "Just to be transparent," she stated, "this encounter is being documented." Mercer's gaze shifted to the device. For the first time, uncertainty crossed his expression, but he didn't retreat. "Out. Now." Adrian emerged, standing with dignity, not confrontational, but resolute. She didn't raise her voice or struggle, yet her self-assurance was unmistakable, even in civilian attire. Mercer observed her carefully. For the first time, a quiet voice in his mind questioned, "What exactly am I dealing with here?" But his ego spoke louder. He forced her to walk a straight path beneath the street lamps, treating her like some intoxicated driver on a weekend evening. She performed flawlessly. No slurred speech, no stumbling, no uncertainty. Nevertheless, he issued her a citation. Failure to maintain your lane. Adrian accepted the paper wordlessly, just with a look. Then she returned to her vehicle and departed. But Mercer had no clue that citation would land in court and transform everything. Sergeant Daniel Mercer's perspective. Mercer wasn't fresh to police work. 15 years on the force had toughened him. He'd dealt with everything. Street brawls, vehicle accidents, and built a reputation. The kind that made new officers stiffen when he entered a room, and he preferred it that way. He didn't pose questions. He issued commands. To him, the badge represented authority. The final word. It made no difference if it was a smart-mouthed teenager or a motorist asking too many questions. Mercer never yielded, and he never offered apologies. His station understood what he was, an officer who completed his paperwork, arrived punctually, and never wavered. But they also recognized he possessed a cutting tongue and a volatile temper. Nobody questioned him until that evening. Back at headquarters, he barely referenced the traffic stop. He logged the ticket. Failure to maintain lane, suspected impairment, no arrest, and placed his body camera in the charger as usual. The recording remained untouched for 48 hours. Meanwhile, Mercer joked about it in the break area. "Some lady tried to pull rank on me," he told Officer Diaz. "Flashed her government credentials like it was supposed to intimidate me." Diaz's expression grew serious. "Hold on. She was military?" Mercer shrugged. Said her name was Wallace, Adrian Wallace. Diaz's demeanor shifted. "Lieutenant Colonel Wallace? She addressed the academy last year. She's not just military. She's high-ranking. Oversees logistics at Fort Wayne. Bronze Star. 2 combat deployments. She's legitimate." Mercer dismissed it. "Don't care who she is. On these streets, I'm the authority." But something in Diaz's voice lingered with him, that subtle note of reverence. Still, Mercer didn't review the footage, didn't reconsider the citation. In his thinking, it was finished. But it wasn't. Adrian's response. Adrian wasn't one to create drama over trivial matters. She wasn't theatrical. She wasn't combative. And after 22 years in uniform, 2 overseas tours, and countless dangerous situations, she didn't have patience for meaningless conflicts. But this was different, because she wasn't only considering herself. She was thinking about every young service member she'd guided, every civilian she'd witnessed being mistreated, every woman, particularly every black woman, compelled to remain silent just to avoid confrontation. And she wasn't remaining silent. The following morning, she sat in her Fort Wayne office, staring at her computer screen. She hadn't rested well. Not from rage, though she was furious, but from replaying the stop mentally, the way he addressed her, the way his hand hovered near his weapon, the way he attempted to provoke her. She understood how catastrophic it could have been if she'd lost control. Her aide, Sergeant Daniels, knocked. "You all right, ma'am?" Adrian glanced up. "No, but I'm addressing it." He entered, closing the door. "I watched the video. Want me to contact the base attorney?" "Already handled," she replied. Daniels hesitated. "You certain you want to make this public?" Adrian leaned back. "I'm not seeking drama. I'm seeking accountability." And she meant every word. She'd spent her career leading through discipline and integrity. Her rank wasn't merely a title. She'd earned it. She'd commanded convoys in combat zones, coordinated disaster relief, managed personnel and equipment across 4 continents. But none of that mattered to Mercer. To him, she was simply another driver who didn't comply quickly enough. And that's what troubled her most, how effortless it was for him. So she made calls to military attorneys, to the Inspector General. She included the video, submitted a formal complaint, and allowed the evidence to speak for itself. By week's end, Mercer's name was connected to an investigation. The department's legal team was notified, and Adrian, she continued working, remained quiet. But behind the scenes, she was prepared. Because her attorney had explained the stop wasn't just discourteous, it might have violated federal regulations, and if necessary, they'd pursue it in court. Adrian didn't hesitate. She was ready. The reckoning Mercer still believed this would fade away until the envelope appeared. Plain, thin, just a manila folder with his name printed on the front. He tore it open in the parking lot, expecting another departmental memo. But it wasn't. It was a court summons. A civil rights lawsuit had been filed. Plaintiff, Lieutenant Colonel Adrian Wallace. Charges: unlawful detention, intimidation, abuse of authority. Mercer stood there momentarily, staring at the document. Then he walked away. He laughed out loud. "No way," he muttered. "No way this stands." But when he returned to the station, the atmosphere had shifted. His supervisor, Chief Redding, summoned him to the office. The door closed. The blinds were drawn. "Dan," Redding began, "we need to discuss something." Mercer sat with arms crossed. "About what? The woman from the other night? She's playing victim." Redding wasn't amused. "She's not pretending. Do you even understand who she is?" "I don't care who she is. She got stopped, acted disrespectful, and now she's angry I didn't treat her like royalty." Redding leaned forward. "She's not just anyone. She's a senior military officer, a war veteran. Her record is spotless. She has influential connections, and she has the entire incident recorded. From her perspective and yours." Mercer shrugged. "So what? We just surrender and apologize because she has rank?" "No. But we can't pretend this is nothing. You're going to court. And when this gets out, which it will, it'll explode." Still, Mercer remained defiant. "She wasn't even arrested. I didn't touch her. I followed protocol." "You were aggressive, Dan. You escalated things. You treated her like a criminal before you knew who she was." Mercer pressed his lips together. For once, he had no quick retort. The notice stated the court date was in 3 weeks. By then, rumors had circulated through the department, hushed conversations in the locker room, strange glances in the corridors. No one spoke to his face, but Mercer could sense the transformation. He wasn't the tough guy anymore. He was vulnerable now, and the others could tell. Back at her base, Adrian prepared as well, but differently. She didn't rush to the media or plead for sympathy. She met with her attorneys privately. They reviewed the footage repeatedly. She documented every detail of what occurred. She was calm, collected, but determined. Her lawyer, Delaney Price, sat across from her and asked, "Are you certain you want to take this to trial?" "It's public. It'll follow you." Adrian nodded. "Good. Let it." Price paused. Most people would have dropped it. "I've ignored too much already," Adrian said. "This isn't just about me." She wasn't pursuing money. She wanted validation. Something official that demonstrated power. Didn't mean you could act however you pleased. Silence wasn't the only option. She wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for everyone who had ever been disrespected, dismissed, or bullied by someone hiding behind authority. When the court date arrived, she didn't enter quietly. She walked in wearing her complete military dress uniform, ribbons, decorations, her rank clearly visible for all to observe. She wanted the jury to see her not just as a woman in a car that night, but as someone who had served her nation, followed the rules, and expected fairness in return. Mercer was already seated when she entered. He turned, saw the uniform, and for the first time, his arrogant expression faltered. But the real test hadn't started yet. The courtroom was filled, not with reporters, not yet, but with officers from both the local police department and Fort Wayne military installation. Adrian's fellow soldiers sat quietly, dressed in uniform or formal attire, alongside regular citizens who didn't fully grasp the case. To some, this appeared like a simple traffic stop gone wrong. To Adrian, it was the culmination of something larger, something that had been building for years. Mercer sat rigidly at the defense table, his face unreadable but strained. His attorney, Charles Brenner, whispered something to him. Mercer didn't respond. He just kept his eyes on the judge. Then Adrian was called. She stood, straightened her collar, and walked to the witness stand with the same steady confidence she'd used leading troops through peril. She didn't rush. She didn't hesitate. Every person in the room watched her. Her medals shone. Her posture commanded respect, not because of her uniform, but because of what she'd earned. The judge cleared his throat. "Colonel Wallace, thank you for your service. You may proceed." Delaney Price stepped forward. "Ready. Lieutenant Colonel, could you describe the events of January 17th? Adrian spoke clearly. "I was returning from a meeting at the Indiana Guard Reserve around 11:15 p.m. when Officer Mercer stopped me. I wasn't weaving. I wasn't intoxicated. I cooperated and asked reasonable questions, but he responded with hostility." Her voice remained steady. "Just facts. No emotion. He ordered me to exit the car without explanation. When I inquired, he simply repeated it more loudly. That's when I began recording." Delaney nodded. "Did you ever refuse a direct command?" "No." "Did you resist?" "No." "Did you inform him who you were?" "Yes. I stated I worked for the government and was operating an official vehicle." The room was completely silent. No whispers, no movement, just the sound of pens on paper. Then they played the videos. First, Adrian's phone recording, clear and damaging. Then, Mercer's body camera footage showing his harsh tone, his intimidating posture, his hand near his weapon, even though she was cooperating. The jury didn't need to deliberate. You could feel their opinion shifting. Next came Mercer's attorney, Brenner, trying to sound respectful, but press aggressively. "Lieutenant Colonel Wallace, isn't it possible Officer Mercer was simply performing his duties?" Adrian didn't waver. "No." "Couldn't he have been concerned about safety?" "I was driving properly. I was sober. I wasn't threatening anyone. There was no danger." "And yet you recorded the stop. Why?" "Because experience taught me that remaining quiet doesn't guarantee safety. I wanted evidence of what happened." Brenner nodded slowly. "So you don't believe officers should use their discretion during stops?" Adrian looked directly at him. "I believe discretion must come with restraint. That badge isn't permission to do whatever you want. It's a responsibility." Even the judge paused at that. Then it was Mercer's turn. He didn't testify, just watched as they played the videos again. Frame by frame, every harsh word, every glare, every time he treated her like she didn't matter. The prosecutor asked, "Sergeant Mercer, why did you order her from the car?" Mercer tensed. "She seemed suspicious. Did she disobey you?" "She questioned me." "Is that illegal?" Mercer paused. "No." "Did she yell? Threaten you?" "No." "Then why escalate?" No answer. "Sergeant Mercer, did you know she was a lieutenant colonel?" "Not then." "And if you had?" Mercer's voice dropped. "I might have handled it differently." The room went still. There it was. Not quite an admission, but the truth slipping out. That night Mercer didn't see a person. He saw someone who didn't comply fast enough, didn't behave the way he wanted. Now, with her rank visible and the whole court watching, everyone understood. But the trial wasn't finished. The jury still had to decide what justice looked like. 3 days later, they delivered their verdict. The courthouse was quieter now. No uniforms, no extra officers, just Adrian, her attorney, and a few curious observers. Mercer sat with his lawyer, trying to maintain a blank expression, but his jaw tightened slightly. Judge Cynthia Morales surveyed the room. In the case of Wallace versus Mercer, the jury finds in favor of the plaintiff. Mercer shifted. Adrian didn't move. The court rules that Sergeant Mercer violated constitutional rights during an unlawful stop. His actions failed to follow department policy or basic professional standards. No one applauded. No one gasped. Just the heavy silence of justice being served. Mercer's attorney leaned closer and whispered, "We'll appeal." But even he seemed uncertain. The judge continued. "No criminal charges will be filed at this time. But the plaintiff is awarded $35,000 in damages. This ruling will remain in the public record indefinitely. Additionally, It will be forwarded to the Department of Justice and the Toledo Police Department for review and policy reform." Adrian didn't smile, cheer, or show elation. She simply gave a single nod, not to the judge or the jury, but to herself. She had accomplished what she set out to do. After the trial, Mercer stood outside the courthouse, pacing near the steps. A few local news reporters had gathered. Not a massive crowd, but enough for him to duck his head and shield his face behind a folder as cameras clicked. He remained silent, offered no statement, and simply drove away. Inside, Adrian paused in the hallway, checked her phone, and saw the message. "You won." Case closed. Her attorney caught up to her. "You could have demanded more money." Adrian shook her head. It wasn't about the money. Delaney studied her. "Do you think this will make a difference?" Adrian looked toward the glass doors and replied, "I'm not certain. But maybe next time he stops someone, he'll think twice." A week later, Mercer was suspended pending the police department's review of the case. Some whispered he might be transferred to a different position. Others said his career was finished. Either way, the protection he once enjoyed was shattered, and everyone could see it. At Fort Wayne, Adrian returned to her duties as if nothing had happened. She didn't want to be viewed as a hero or give interviews. She had work to complete, people to train, missions to execute, and responsibilities to fulfill. But within her unit, the message was clear. You don't always have to shout to earn respect. You don't always have to break down to prove you were wronged. Sometimes, staying composed says more than anger ever could. Even with the court's decision in her favor, Adrian knew the struggle wasn't over, because holding someone accountable isn't just about consequences. It's about what happens next. 2 months later, Adrian stood before a room of new recruits at Fort Wayne. Most had only worn the uniform for a few weeks. Young, enthusiastic, ready to serve. She wasn't there to discuss battle strategies or logistics. This time, she spoke about leadership, what it means when no one is watching. She scanned the room and asked, "How many of you believe a uniform automatically earns people's respect?" A few hands rose, some hesitant, some confident. She nodded. "I understand why you'd think that. But here's the reality. Respect isn't granted. It's earned through every action, every decision." She let the words resonate. "The same applies to power," she continued. "The badge, the rank, the authority. It's not armor. It's a burden. If you can't handle it with integrity, you don't deserve it." In the back, a young soldier sat up straighter, listening intently. Adrian paused, then added, "When an officer stopped me and forgot his oath, I could have screamed. I could have panicked. I could have ignored it." She met their eyes. "I didn't. I recorded it. I reported it. I went to court and spoke the truth." A long silence followed. "That officer thought his badge made him untouchable until he saw my rank, not just on my uniform, but in how I held my ground. That's the difference. That's true leadership." The room remained quiet, not from boredom, but from comprehension. Adrian closed her folder and looked up. "Lead with integrity, serve with honor, and remember, you don't just wear the uniform, you represent everyone who ever wore it, and everyone who ever will." She stepped down, not for applause, not for gratitude, but because her point was made. Let this be a lesson. Power without accountability is just a mask for fear. Speak up. Stand firm. When you witness injustice, don't turn away, because silence enables the wrongdoers, but courage protects everyone else.